The date is February 17th, 2009, and a Ponzi scheme disguised as an investment firm ran by a man named Alan Stanford has came crumbling to the ground. Federal agents stormed his offices, his assets were frozen, and the truth was revealed. Stanford was not a financial guru, but the mastermind behind a $7 billion Ponzi scheme, one of the largest in history. Thousands of investors lost everything. The man who once lived like a king was now facing a lifetime behind bars. For years, he had been hailed as a billionaire banking genius, a man who promised wealth beyond imagination. His empire stretched across continents, built on promises of sky-high returns and elite financial security. But on this day, the illusion shattered. How did it all come to this? How did a small-town Texas businessman rise to the top, only to orchestrate one of the greatest financial frauds the world has ever seen? This is the story of Alan Stanford, the man who fooled the world and lost everything. Every great scam starts with a dream, a promise of wealth, stability, and endless success. For Alan Stanford, that dream was larger than life. A man who went from a small-town Texas upbringing to the world stage, building an empire that stretched across continents. But behind the lavish parties, the private jets, and the billion-dollar fortune, there was a lie.
The number one goal is to fight this thing for the investors and clients who had confidence in Stanford.
A Ponzi scheme so massive, it would shake the financial world to its core. Born in Mexia, Texas, in 1950, Robert Alan Stanford seemed destined for greatness. He had charm, charisma, and a relentless drive to succeed. After graduating from Baylor University, he dabbled in real estate and business, but success was elusive. Then came the oil crisis of the 1980s, a period that forced him to think bigger. Stanford moved to the Caribbean, where financial regulations were lax and opportunities for high-stakes banking were abundant. He established the Stanford International Bank in Antigua in 1985, promising clients high returns on their investments. He wasn't just another banker. He was a financial visionary, a billionaire in the making. But in reality, his bank wasn't built on solid financials. It was built on deception. By the 1990s, Alan Stanford was a rising star in the world of finance. His bank in Antigua was flourishing, at least on paper. Clients were drawn in by promises of high-yield certificates of deposit, CDs, offering returns far greater than any legitimate bank. The money poured in, and Stanford expanded his empire. Private jets, luxury yachts, sprawling mansions. He bought influence, rubbing shoulders with politicians, celebrities, and athletes. He even became a knight, earning the title Sir Alan Stanford from the Antiguan government. The world saw a billionaire philanthropist, a man who was changing lives. But behind the scenes, his financial empire was a house of cards, waiting to collapse. While Stanford's empire appeared untouchable, financial experts and regulators were growing suspicious. How was he able to promise such high returns when even the best banks in the world struggled to offer a fraction of that? Investigations began. Whispers of fraud turned into formal complaints. In 2007, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, started looking into Stanford International Bank. But he wasn't worried. He had weathered scrutiny before, and his empire still stood. Then came 2008, the financial crisis that changed everything. The world's biggest banks were failing, and investors wanted their money. The cracks in Stanford's scheme became impossible to hide. February 17, 2009, the day Alan Stanford's world came crashing down. The SEC charged him with running a $7 billion Ponzi scheme. His financial empire was a fraud. Investors' money had never been invested, only recycled to pay earlier clients. The high returns, they were fake. Stanford tried to flee, but the U.S. authorities caught up with him. His assets were frozen, his bank shut down, and his luxurious lifestyle vanished overnight. Thousands of investors lost their life savings.
I'm not angry. That's not going to do me any good. But I feel very betrayed.
The empire Stanford had built for decades was gone in an instant. After years of legal battles, Alan Stanford faced his reckoning. In 2012, he was sentenced to 110 years in prison for orchestrating one of the largest financial frauds in history. His name, once synonymous with wealth and power, became a symbol of greed and deception. His victims, many of whom had invested their entire life savings, were left with little recourse. The money was gone, scattered across accounts, offshore banks, and luxurious assets that had been seized by the government. Yet even from behind bars, Stanford refused to admit guilt. He insisted he had done nothing wrong, that he was simply the victim of a government witch hunt. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the financial world had moved on. Years later, the financial world still feels the impact of Stanford's fraud. Stricter regulations were introduced, but the scars remain. The victims, many of whom were everyday people hoping for financial security, continue to fight for restitution. Despite efforts to recover lost funds, much of the money was never found. Investigators traced portions of it to hidden offshore accounts, but the full extent of the fraud remains a mystery. The devastation left behind by Stanford's scheme extended far beyond the financial losses. It shattered lives, destroyed trust, and highlighted the vulnerabilities in global financial systems. As for Stanford, he remains behind bars, maintaining his innocence, claiming he was unfairly targeted. But the evidence is undeniable. The empire he built was never real. The wealth, the prestige, the success, it was all an illusion. This is the story of Alan Stanford, the man who fooled the world until the world caught up with him. Hey, if you're enjoying the story so far and would like to support the channel, head over to dudedivision.com, the destination for those who refuse to blend in. Whether you're built for the grind, forged in fire, or looking to wear something that stands out amongst the crowd, visit dudedivision.com and use code LOSTCHRONICLES for 15% off your first order. Stand tall, stay relentless. Now let's get back to the story. Stanford's Ponzi scheme didn't just affect individuals, it shook the financial world. Governments reevaluated their regulatory practices, banks implemented stricter monitoring, and yet Ponzi schemes continue to emerge, proving that greed and deception are not unique to one man. As for Stanford, he remains behind bars, maintaining his innocence, claiming he was unfairly targeted. But the evidence is undeniable. The empire he built was never real. The wealth, the prestige, the success, it was all an illusion. This is the story of Alan Stanford, the man who fooled the world until the world caught up with him. Stanford's Ponzi scheme didn't just affect individuals. It shook the financial world. Governments reevaluated their regulatory practices. Banks implemented stricter monitoring. And yet Ponzi schemes continue to emerge, proving that greed and deception are not unique to one man. From Bernie Madoff to newer financial scandals, Stanford's case serves as a stark warning. The financial system is built on trust, and once that trust is broken, the damage can be irreversible. So the question remains, will the world ever learn, or will there always be another Alan Stanford waiting to rise, deceive, and ultimately fall? Beyond the headlines, the collapse of Stanford's empire left behind real victims, families torn apart, retirements ruined, people who had trusted him now struggling to rebuild their lives. Some never recovered. Interviews with former investors reveal the depth of the devastation. Many lost their homes. Others faced years of legal battles just to claim a fraction of what they had lost. The emotional toll was just as severe as the financial one. This wasn't just a story of financial fraud. It was a tragedy that affected thousands. A reminder that unchecked greed can have consequences far beyond the boardroom. In the world of finance, power and greed go hand in hand, but in the end, deception always has a price, and Alan Stanford paid his in full. Trade wisely, my dudes. Well, that's the end of the story, but let us know in the comments what you think. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe for more wild stories.